Our nervous system plays a vital role in how we think and feel. Neurons are the basic building blocks of the body's chemistry. Dendrites receive signals through their branching limbs and transmit messages through the cell body and down through the axon. At the terminal branch end, synaptic knobs open and send chemical messages called neurotransmitters across the tiny gap that separates one neuron from another neuron. Here you can see a depiction of one neuron sending a message to another neuron. And the electrical impulse, the action potential happens, and on down to the synaptic knobs, which release the chemical. And here you can see a close-up view of the chemical being released from one neuron and being received into the receptor sites of another neuron. As mentioned on Tuesday, this table shows us some of the common neurotransmitters and their functions. You can see that they are involved in all of our thoughts and actions. Also, as mentioned on Tuesday, you can see that our nervous system is organized very clearly. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is divided into the autonomic system and the somatic system. The somatic system covers information coming in from our various senses, and they relay messages back and forth between those sensory organs in our brain. It also relays messages back and forth between our brain and our skeletal muscles. On the autonomic side, we have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic divisions and the parasympathetic division. The sympathetic division is the one that gives us the fight or flight response whenever we're faced with a threat. And the parasympathetic system is our rest and digest system. So when we are calm and just going about our day-to-day activities, that is the system that is operating. Here again is the slide showing changes that go through our body under the sympathetic system. You see that there on the left side. So when we're faced with a threat, our body prepares us to face that threat or to flee that threat. And in order to do that, changes happen, including the dilating of our pupils, increased heart rate. Our digestive system is slowed down so that we can conserve energy for the fight or the fleeing. Changes happen to our blood sugar level. And hormones are secreted that will aid us in having energy to face the threat. And our bladder is relaxed, and so on and so forth. There is also another messaging system within our body, and that is our hormonal system. This is overseen by a region of the brain called the hypothalamus, which actually controls the pituitary gland, which is considered the master gland in that it controls what happens with a lot of the other glands throughout our body. Each of these glands secretes hormones, and hormones have some similarities to neurotransmitters. One main difference between neurotransmitters and hormones is that neurotransmitters transmit their messages much more quickly. Hormones are a slower system. But you can see here that we have the thyroid gland, which affects the metabolism. We have the parathyroids, the pancreas, the adrenal glands, and then of course in the male the testes, and in the female the ovary glands. Although we have two separate systems, the neurotransmitters in the brain and that transmit information throughout our body, and the hormones which transmit information by flowing through our blood, these two systems are not totally separate, and oftentimes they work together to get messages to different parts of the body to influence our moods, our thoughts, and our actions. Our text tells us that new brain systems build upon old, and so as they go through the various structures of the brain, they start at the very base of the brain and work their way up to the top. The base of the brain stem, is the oldest structure in the brain, and it houses such structures as the medulla, the pons, the reticular formation, and the thalamus. One important thing to note about the brain is that the brain is cross-wired. And what we mean by this is that the left side of the brain, the left hemisphere of the brain, is in charge of the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere is in charge of the left side of the body. Our daily schedule of waking and sleeping is governed by a biological clock known as the circadian rhythm. Our sleep also follows a repeating cycle. We go through particular cycles of sleep, and we repeat those cycles approximately every 90 minutes throughout the night. So for instance, in the beginning, one of the ways that they've found out about these different cycles is through watching our brain and comparing the types of waves that happen within our brain. So here you see an image of the different types of waves. In the waking beta, the waves are pretty steady, almost like a straight line. In the waking alpha, you see a lot more activity. And of course, then there's REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep. That's the time when we are most likely to be dreaming throughout the night and when our eyes are actually moving even though we're asleep. And then they have stages of sleep that they've identified as non-REM 1, non-REM 2, and non-REM 3. Non-REM 1 is a light sleep when we're just first falling off to sleep and we're easily awakened. And most often, if we're awakened during this stage, we'll tell people that we weren't asleep at all, even though we were sleeping. As we get more settled into our sleep, we go into non-REM sleep 2, and you can see that the waves are starting to be larger as they go across. And then our deepest sleep is non-REM 3 sleep. And this type of sleep is difficult for us to wake from, and most often if we are awakened in this particular stage of sleep, we'll experience some confusion. In this chart you can see the hours of sleep of young adults compared to the hours of sleep of older adults. And what's interesting, as you look at this chart, you can see that with young adults, REM sleep increases as the night progresses. So we have those repeated, we go through those repeated stages, but as the night goes on, we spend more time in the stage of REM sleep. One problem that many Americans have is not getting enough sleep. And certainly students face that challenge a lot. And oftentimes in our culture, because we lead such busy lives, when we need to gather some more time from somewhere, we tend to gather it by shortchanging ourselves on sleep. This practice is not a good practice because lack of sleep affects us even though we think that it doesn't. And studies have shown that when people have less sleep, their tendency is to have more accidents. And this is really well documented during the time of the year when the time changes and people lose that hour of sleep. It's important to know some of the changes that happen when people are sleep deprived. And so in this slide, they go through the changes in the body that happen. Specifically, we lose our ability to focus on it and pay attention to things. Lack of sleep disrupts the process of our storing memories, and it also can increase the risk of depression. It decreases our immune system. It can increase the production of fat cells, so that people who are sleep deprived tend to be more overweight. It affects our joints in that it increases inflammation in the joints and has a relationship to arthritis. In our heart, it gives us an increased risk of high blood pressure. In our stomach, it increases hunger, which is related to what I said before about increasing obesity, because it increases a particular substance in the stomach that contributes to our being more hungry, and it decreases the substance that would decrease our hunger. And then finally, it affects our muscle strength in that it slows our reaction time and it slows our motor learning. Our text talks about dreaming and the different theories about why we dream. And so this chart shows us some of the popular theories, starting with Freud's theory that dreams are a sort of wish satisfaction in which we're able to express things that we wouldn't normally be able to express. Freud talks about there being different parts to a dream, both manifest content and a latent content. The latent content is the part of the dream that we remember and recognize and can talk about. Freud believed there was another meaning to the dream, that it gets conveyed in symbols, and he called that the manifest part of the dream, and that is the deeper meaning of the dream. Of course, there's no way to support this theory scientifically. It's impossible to test it out, so there's not a lot of support for it today. Today, more focus is given to the theories provided by neuroscientists. One such theory is the information processing theory, which tells us that dreams really help us to sort out the experiences that we've had throughout the day and to consolidate our memories. So in the information processing view, when we're asleep, our brain is just processing information. Another view is the neural preservation and development view, in which the idea is that REM sleep may help us to develop and preserve neural pathways. So while we're sleeping, and particularly while we're in the REM stage, the stimulation that's going on in our brain is helping us to develop more neurons. There's the neural activation theory, and in this one, REM sleep is triggering neural activity that produces random visual memories. And so our brain waves then work to take those memories, and weave them into a story to try to make sense of what's going on. That's one way to explain the dreams that we have. Another theory is the cognitive development theory, and the idea here is that dreams reflect where we are in our cognitive development. Backing that up is this finding that when we're in a dream, the dream content reflects where we are cognitively. So we'll talk at the level that we actually are at during the daytime. Things can go wrong while we're sleeping, and I will discuss sleep disorders in consciousness number 3.